Hello and welcome to Sacred Wellness. I am your host, Terry Ann Russell. We talk about midlife and we understand that midlife is a remembering. In this space, we help women awaken and rise into who they were truly always meant to be. Today, my guest is Mary Clavier. Um, Mary is with me today, and we're discussing her work, which involves the mind-body connection, conscious leadership, and what it means to truly live and lead in alignment with who you are. Through grounded spiritual insight and honest conversations, she helps people navigate life's transitions and move beyond overthinking and reconnect with their inner authority. Mary, I'm so honored to have you here today on the show.
Thank you, Terrian. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It's great to be here.
Thanks. I want to talk a little bit about conscious leadership. I think it's a term that we're really hearing a lot right now. And I believe that, living embodied, and a lot of what my show is on Sacred Wellness is about talking about embodiment. And we talk about conscious leadership. What does it actually mean to lead consciously, and how is it different than traditional leadership?
So it ties so nicely with embodiment because I really believe that it's about, well, first showing up as you as a whole person, right? Not just having the aspect of, let's say, work or home, but we are people that navigate all of these things together and bringing this awareness, being aware in the moments, having the self awareness to really make choices in each moment, to honor in each moment. And like you mentioned, all the topics you cover on your podcast, it's really about having that awareness and bringing it to your daily life in different ways. And part of that also is the embodiment piece of actually living it and feeling it more deeply.
Yeah, I think when people are going through a spiritual awakening or just they're starting to go through this midlife place, and we're looking at all those things that held us back previously, and we're starting to change and shift, but we don't always understand what it means to be living consciously or living embodied. And how I try to describe it is something that just will come very naturally. It's not something you really have to do. I think, as a human race, we get caught up in all the logistics of it, right? Often our
Yeah.
mind is so preoccupied. Well, I need the steps. You have to tell me the steps. How do I get there and how do I do this and what does it look like? And I'm always sharing with people that it's so individualized for everybody. We're so different and so unique. So what living embodied to me may mean not living, living embodied to you may not mean it the same thing. I like that you talk a lot about the body, mind. I can't speak today. I like that you talk about the mind body connection, especially when it comes to decision making, because I think a lot of us, myself included, was so detached from the body for a long time. And I don't think we're taught that our body is this intuitive piece that should be followed. Do you want to talk a little bit about how the body plays a role in everything that we do?
Sure. Yeah. And it was my similar experience as well. And I'm sure for a lot of your listeners, I mean, I spent about 15 years in corporate and I was very much not paying attention to any of it, right? And over time, just kind of going through a lot of those motions. But what I found that happened for me is that when you don't pay attention for long enough, your body will start knocking louder and louder and louder until you need to pay attention. And so that was part of my journey and my process right before I left corporate when I was in a pretty stressful spot of trying to navigate traveling. My daughters were really young at the time. I was away from home a lot. I was building a business on the side, all these things. And I woke up one morning and my teeth, I woke up with so much pain in my mouth and it felt like my teeth were going to fall out. I actually ran to the mirror and I was like, what is happening? I was like
Wow.
looking like what's happening to my teeth. So I had to go to the dentist for an emergency appointment. I always say like who really needs to make emergency appointments with the dentist? But there I was. And turns out I was grinding my teeth during the night from all the stress that I was not managing appropriately during the day because I was pushing and I was forcing and I really wasn't listening to my body. And so that was like one of the earlier pieces that set me on my path of, wait a minute, our bodies are always speaking to us, and there's so much wisdom there that we have just been trained over time to override in so many ways. And it ties also with how we make decisions, how we trust ourselves, how we know where to go next, or how we're showing up, or any of the things. It's all connected to starting by being aware and then listening. Like I ask people all the time, like, are you listening to what your body is telling you? What is it telling you right now that you maybe haven't been paying attention to?
Yeah, and I like that you said that it will speak louder if you don't listen. I'm one
Yeah.
of those people. I'm one of those people that don't do like subtlety. I always say with my intuition as well, like my guides are like, oh, she's not listening because she doesn't do subtlety. So let's really like draw it in there so she'll
Yep.
hear it. But I think as a society, I was raised by a very self-sacrificing mom. So it was very natural for me growing up watching that and then having my own children to sacrifice everything that I wanted so that they could have this, they could have that, and they can be raised a specific way, which I thought at that time was the right way. So I think logic plays a role in it, how we're raised plays a role in it. Can you talk a little bit about that decision making beyond the mind? Because how do we sort of separate that, right? We have the mind coming in, and I always share because I think it's so funny sometimes the way my guides speak to me, but how that decision making, right, is moving beyond. How do we move beyond what that mind is telling us?
Yeah, so there's a few things. First, I would say for me, as someone that has always been an overthinker and over processing all the time, I first had to learn how to get out of my mind and back into my body.
Hmm.
So for that, I would do a lot of different practices, whether it was body tapping or meditation or going for walks. For me, going for walks was a big one. But first, starting with that practice of starting to listen and being in tune with how my body works and how it communicates with me, right? And then from there, I started using human design as a tool
Hmm.
to show, because there's so much in it that can show the connections between your mind and body, how your energy works, how you're designed to show up. One of those things is decision making. And so I love to combine like getting out of the mind and back into the body with then learning and understanding your own decision making style so that then you can kind of put it into practice, right? There's so many things out there that there can be so much information, and what do you actually do with it?
Hmm.
And the way I like to say is like, all right, you try these different things, get to know your body, and understand how you're meant to make decisions. We're meant to be deciding from our bodies, and it's our mind that always kind of take tries to take over. So out of the mind into the body first, and then for me it's been all right, practicing based on your unique decision making style, practicing how does that look for you. And usually when I work with clients on this, we reflect on past decisions that were made, how they worked well or didn't, and try to see, okay, where did those emotions come up
Hmm.
and what came from that. And then experimenting with, all right, how do you want to use this and integrate it going forward? Because I'm all about using things that are helpful in some way to kind of keep you moving on your path,
Yeah.
not from a place of force, obviously, but just to have it be supportive to you and your process.
No, right. And that makes sense. And it also aligns with the work that I do with the healing because we talk about how intuitive beings we are. And if I'm talking to somebody about feeling and they're not clairsentient, they're not going to have any clue about what I'm speaking about. They may have this knowing within them, or they may see visions, So often you're spot on with that. And it's like honing in, right? We're like honing in on what is their unique way that works for them. And that's why I always say, these tools are great, but when you break it down to the specific individual, I think that's where the important work comes in. You have a free design making series, and I'm going to share the link later in the description when we air the podcast. But can you tell us a little bit about what that is and how you work with people and what they'll be learning through that experience?
Sure. Yeah. So I have a decision making series. So The first episode in the series, episode number 48, and thank you for sharing the link, gives background on decision making, how it works, a little bit about human design and the whole process. And then what listeners can do is go get their free chart and then tune in to one of the following episodes. That's the one specific for how they best make decisions.
Hmm.
There's a workbook that goes with it too, where you can kind of reflect on your style and see what's working for you right now, what might not be working. But it's a whole series and sequence that you can pick up and see where you are and then dive deeper into your specific style. Because I this connects so much to the intuitiveness that you talked about in the beginning and also the conscious leadership because decision making is such a big part of our everyday lives. And it's like, all right, how can we each be working in a place more connected, making more aligned decisions so that it can support us, our homes, our work, and the world, really, truthfully.
Yeah. And if you think about it, we've all made decisions out of fear. And we know what that feels like, right? So we are
Yeah.
experienced in making decisions out of fear very often. And to decipher and be able to change that and shift that into this new perspective, I think is amazing. So I think the work that you do is so wonderful and so needed in the world today. So thank you.
Thank you.
Let's talk about reconnecting with inner authority. And I love that because so many people are so disconnected from their inner authority, or they don't trust what their inner authority is telling them. Like I said, I mentioned being growing up self-sacrificing, but you may have grown up and you're a people pleaser. So, what does that mean when we're reconnecting to our inner authority finally, and we're not following those old beliefs, thought, and patterns that we've been designed to follow?
So for me, it's the first part of the process, like I mentioned earlier, was getting out of the mind and back into the body. Then I think when we're in our bodies, it's all about connecting to our deeper spirit, soul, higher self, whatever you want to call it, and building that relationship. And that to me is where I say we're building our self trust, we're building our
Hmm.
self love, we are building our, I also call it self leadership in a way,
Hmm.
so that we can be working from our internal compass, whatever that is for us. And really, it's a lot about giving ourselves permission, really, to do things differently than maybe the way we grew up or the conditioning that we've brought along with us, like the people pleasing and all of these things. And so I'm really of the mind that it, of course, doesn't happen all at once. It's a process and a
Correct.
practice. But I really feel that as we tune in, as we find those tools that work best for us, the more often we tap into that, the easier it becomes to access it. I'm sure, like you tell clients with readings and connecting to their guides and all of these things, it's building that piece of it then has the ripple effect to all the other things.
Yes, it's like building a relationship, any other relationship that you'd have. And because we've maybe not been taught how to put ourselves first or how to do these things for ourselves, that relationship is almost like that really disconnected relationship you've had in your life, right? It's like you want them to do this and that for you, and they're not doing it. And it's sort of like that with you and yourself often. And we have to build and cultivate it and grow it into this beautiful thing that just becomes natural. And it is like living embodied, living consciously from this inner authority space, higher self, and I think for everyone listening, a lot of my clients are in this big space of overwhelm right now, whether that's from how they were raised or what's going on in the world today or the way that, we work. We don't even work 9 to 5 anymore. We work more like 9 to 9.
I know.
And so we have all of that overwhelm and we have the guilt. And being a young mom, I remember, all of that guilt that I felt. Can you talk a little bit about how do we change those things? Because so often they're so deeply embedded. And I know you said you worked with human design. Is there any other tips you can share with my listeners? How do we really begin to sort of catch what that is that we're doing and when we're speaking to ourselves?
Yeah. So for me, I'm always about very simple things that can have a big impact. So some of these things listeners might already be doing or they've heard of but haven't necessarily given it a try. Some of the ones that I find most helpful are I started with years ago, I started with a gratitude practice of
Hmm.
just 1 minute a day, just 1 minute. Like you can do anything for 1 minute.
Yes.
So I, I had a mentor share this with me, and I came back from this retreat that I was at, and I said, you know what? I can do it 1 minute a day for a month. Let's see how it goes, right? And I started doing walks, and sure enough, over time, it's like I can do more than a minute. I can do 2 minutes and 3 minutes, and so on and so forth. And just slowly starting to change into that other frequency shifts so many things, right? When you start looking and start reprogramming from a place of, let's say, abundance, or a place of what you have and what you can see versus those places of lack, that our minds are just so programmed. As soon as we understand that the mind is so programmed, it likes to latch on to what's negative. It likes to stay safe. It likes to repeat patterns, right? So we
Mhm.
have it's anywhere from like 20 to 50,000 thoughts a day. Most of those, I forget the exact percentage, but it's over 90% of them repeat from the day before, and 80% of those are negative. So we're
Yes.
we're wired we're so wired to be in this place of maybe staying small or lack of in some way. And so I'm really of the belief that any of these small things that you can change, shift your energy just for a minute at a time,
Hmm.
whether it's taking the walk with gratitude or journaling or breath work or body tapping is another one that I love. Any of these things that can just help in a moment, and then
Hmm.
using that practice, let's say between calls at work or between, coming home from work and before you go inside the house, right? Like those transition periods. Even if you
Yeah.
just do something to reset yourself in those moments, over time it adds up and it also has a big impact.
Yeah, I would agree. I learned that back in psychology in college, and I was amazed because at the time I thought I was a really positive person. But when you really pay attention to those thoughts that you're having and how they just come in without any, it's just like automatic, like you said.
Yeah.
And so you're paying attention and you're like, oh, did I really say that to myself? Or how
Yeah.
could I say that to myself? And I thought I was positive. So let me now really pay attention. And I think a lot of people feel like that because they feel like oh, I'm a positive person. I do my affirmations, I meditate and I do all this stuff. But when you really are listening to yourself and how you speak to yourself, it's one of the biggest telltales of that negative program and that we've been exposed to, and how it's just so automatic that we go through, right?
Oh yeah, I have an example that I could say for listeners if anyone wants to try it. I do this often in workshops or with clients, and it's also in the book, but very simply, can you make a list of 10 things that you love about yourself?
Mm,
Do you know how many people tell me they can't get to 10
they can't.
because
Wow.
they're not used to thinking about that or putting themselves first in that way, you know? So
Yeah.
it's a practice, like anything else, but it's just a big one that I think most of us have been trained for so long to not put ourselves first that it feels strange to put yourself first, and then all those feelings come, the guilt and everything else. And actually, you're not better off. You're not helping the world if you're staying in that place, you know?
Yeah. I always said I felt like a better mom when I came home. Like if I went on a retreat or I took a couple of days away, I came home refreshed and I felt like a better
Yeah.
mom.
Yeah.
I saw something the other day that said it was a comedian. He's like, where are all these women getting away to? They're always trying to get away. Yeah, because we need like this reset. You have to get away from it. And sometimes I think
Yeah.
it's so important for women, especially, and that's because that's my work and because what I've done my entire life. But women have to have that ability to be able to reset because we do so much, and we've put so much into not only our children, our husbands, our family, but we also may have people around us that did things the old ways, right? And so they're telling you, what do you mean you're going away for 3 days without your family, and how could you do that, and that's so selfish. So I think that's like that catch 22 where we're trying to work on ourselves, we're trying to do the things we're learning. And I think eventually you're going to come to a place like I am now in midlife, and we're like, hey, enough is enough. I'm doing this for me, right? Do you find
Yeah.
that in your work as well?
Oh, definitely. Definitely for myself and for others. Yeah, for clients and everything, because it's really at some point, yeah, enough is enough. Like you said, it's really you start to care less about what everyone else is thinking or doing. Like it doesn't impact you the same way. And I think especially after you become a mom and start to navigate all that. I mean, if you think about all the comments we get before we become a mom, then during the pregnancy, then after, everyone always wants to give their opinion on everything, right?
Mm.
And we're trying to just show up and do our best. At some point, it's like, okay, I'm done. And
Right.
then what can I do for myself now? Because the things that I've been doing are not working. I don't feel good with how things are right now.
Yeah.
So something's got to change. And then what's that point for me? And how does it look? And what do I want? And all of the things.
Yeah, and the more you do that, that's where we talked about that living embodied and living consciously. We're in the beginning, I think it is making that conscious effort to make sure that we do those things. I have a list of things that I do for myself daily, and those are my non-negotiables, no matter where I am or what I'm doing. And I think that then you move from that space into the embodied space where they just don't even become non-negotiables anymore. They're just a natural part of your daily life. Mary, I want to thank you so much for being here today. But if you could leave our listeners with one takeaway about holding one truth about themselves and their ability to lead their life, what would you say?
I would say it's kind of two in one. Trust yourself and love yourself deeply.
Yeah.
It's really important.
I think it's so important to trust yourself and to be able to love yourself fully the way you'd want to be loved, the way you'd love anybody else, the way you love your children, the way you love your spouse,
Yeah.
love yourself that way. Mary, thank you so much for bringing this grounded wisdom and clarity into the sacred wellness space. I enjoyed our conversation today. And if this conversation feels like permission for you, I ask you to stop searching outside of yourself and start trusting what you already know within you. It's there. Your soul is there to guide you. It's never left you. It's always been there, but it's time to turn off all the noise. And it's time to step into a place of clarity that's coming from within and trust that clarity. So thank you, Mary, again for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.